Allied Fetch Lands, Mana Echoes, Patriarch's Bidding. These are just a few of the expensive cards from Magic's 27th expansion, Onslaught.
But we're not talking about those cards. We're talking about the sleepers. Cards that are cheaper that have very specific uses, but can still be very impactful in EDH. The video starts right now.
Special thanks to our Patreon supporters who power our channel. Check out our Patreon for monthly giveaways, exclusive content, and even a starring role in our fan fight series. Link in the description below.
Hello and welcome to the day.
Thank you for spending your time with us.
I'm Jake.
I'm Joel. Welcome back to another episode of Jake and Joel Are Magic. We are going to talk about the Onslaught Commander Sleeper picks that we've made. But first, if you wouldn't mind, go down there and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you like the video by the end of it. It really helps us out.
It's the best way to support the channel with just the click of a button. If you do like Jake and Joel and you feel so compelled, check us out on Patreon. Any level gets you into the Discord. There are other perks. It might be a good fit for you.
Link is down in the description below. Let's jump into our Onslaught Commander Sleeper picks. As you know, here at Jake and Joel Are Magic, we like to start with a featured uncommon in our Commander
I love this
Sleeper series. Me
Can
too,
we
man.
say that?
Yeah, I like it too.
It's our sleeper series.
Yeah,
Nobody watches it, but that's cool too.
Astral Slide is our featured uncommon. 1 white, 2 other for an enchantment. We like it because it's sticky. Whenever a player cycles a card, you may remove target creature from the game. If you do, return that creature to play under its owner's control at end of turn. This is a very affordable card with a very strong but niche effect. If you have a cycling deck or a deck that features cycling as a sub-theme, and also have a deck that features blinking or ETB creatures as a sub-theme, this card is a house for you.
Yeah, I think it's a great card. Like Joel said, it's very specific. We got the OG border here. A lot of these cards at this point, we're getting outside of the reserve list. So at this point in the Commander Sleeper series, you're not going to see any reserve list cards starting to pop up. This is a very cool card, very specific card. When you have sets like Commander 2020 come out that have, like Brawlin and Shabraz in them, these are the kind of cards that people start to look at for decks like those.
Yep, absolutely. Let's get into the rares, Jake, and we'll start with a wizard called Void Mage Prodigy.
Yeah, so I think 2 printings on this guy, 2 blue for a 2/1. Very specific for a wizard to have a 2/1. But for 2 blue, sacrifice a wizard. It can be itself. To counter target spell, it also has a super fun ability that everybody in the MTG Multiverse loves, Morph.
Yeah, absolutely. What I like about this creature is it's got that same sort of feeling that those enchantments that you just play onto the battlefield and you can sacrifice to destroy a creature or sacrifice to kill an artifact enchantment, stuff like that. It reminds me of that sort of thing where I'm going to have this thing sitting on the battlefield that just very, very politically and straightforwardly says, I have a counterspell. And anybody tries to screw with me or anybody does anything that I don't want you to do, I'm probably going to counter it. It disrupts lines of play. It makes people think twice about the order that they want to do stuff and kind of messes with their mind and plays a little mind game. And I love cards like that. Political cards, I love cards like that in EDH.
And remember, morph is any time. So when you play this as a morph, people are going to be like, oh god, is it a chrome shell crab? Oh god, what is it going to be? Mm-hmm. If you have a Snapcaster Mage on the field, you could Void Mage Prodigy morph. Snapcaster's already done its thing. Now all of a sudden, you've morphed Void Mage, you're paying 2 blue to sacrifice the Snapcaster Mage. You still have 2 blue in the hole for your Void Mage in case there's another spell that you need to counter. Or maybe there's some other wizard that's sitting on the battlefield and Ascend Triplets, Tribal Wizards kind of thing.
Sure.
But there's a lot going on here. It's very rare in the Commander Sleeper series. I don't know how we're going to do it when we get to Legions, and it's all creatures. But it's very rare in Commander Sleeper series for us to feature creatures just because creatures in EDH are so squishy. They die to everything. Like Rolling Earthquake, and we're out. But Void Mage Prodigy is the counter to the cards that need to be countered.
Yeah. Absolutely, it is. Head Games is a card that I was not aware of. This is one of the perks of doing this series, making this series, is that occasionally as we're going through, I find a card that I wasn't even aware existed, and that card is Head Games for me in this set.
Dude, me too, man. I had no idea until you showed me it.
Yeah, 2 black, 3 other for a sorcery. Target opponent puts the cards from his or her hand on top of his or her library. Search that player's library for that many cards. The player puts those cards into his or her hand, then shuffles his or her library. So, you can do this the mean way, have them put their hand on top of their library, go get their basic lands, however many of there were cards in their hand, and just fill their hand with basic lands. We can do this the political way, and if we're going, man, we really need to destroy that creature and that artifact, and Jake's...
Hey, hook it up.
Right, Jake's going, I have one card in my deck that will kill both of them and won't hurt any of what you're doing if you can help me go find it, and you play a little head game with your buddy. I love this card, and I definitely am going to pick up a couple copies to slide into my decks just so people go, wait, let me read that again?
Dude, and I was just going to say that before you said that last point. I really think EDH it's being split into 2 camps, which is CEDH and casual EDH. You have people that have Gaia's Cradle in the CEDH side, and people that are like, I just can't afford that card, or I'm going to proxy it, or whatever. But what I like about Head Games is it's this card that is like an ooh-ah moment. It's like a, oh god, what did you do? It's the kind of card that gets a reaction out of the table,
right?
Which I think is the kind of thing that we need to start thinking about in EDH, are cards that are going to solicit a reaction, things that are going to be a big thing, because this card isn't the kind of card like Identity Crisis that's just going to put somebody out of the game and make them feel salty and sad. They might have a handful of land, or they might have a handful of spells when they're mana screwed,
right?
But either way, they're going to have cards in their hand, and some of these cards, like Identity Crisis, they just feel bad, and we need to think about that outside of CEDH.
Yeah, definitely a fan of Head Games. We've got Grand Melee up next.
Yeah, so 1 red, 3 other, enchantment. Enchantments are sticky. We always talk about enchantments. All creatures attack each turn if able. All creatures block each turn if able. It's just one of those, like, kind of like group hug, or what's the word? Like group slug, or
Punisher, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like a Punisher effect where everybody's having to do something that most likely they don't want to do.
Right. And in the right deck, when you're building it into some kind of deck where you're featuring Death Touch heavily, some kind of deck where you're featuring First Strike heavily, some kind of, trampled deck.
Like Jund Death Touch, Jund First Strike. Yeah, I like that.
That's the kind of effect that I want in a deck like that, where I know that I can just get everybody to start attacking. Hopefully I've also got some effects in there where like creatures maybe can't attack me for some reason. They have to attack my opponents. That's why I like effects like Goad, where we gotta attack in a different direction and they can't attack me stuff. I like effects like this in that Punisher style because essentially everyone is like tapped out unless you're featuring Vigilance heavily, and it gets the game over, I'll tell you that. Plus we've got Kamal the Barbarian in this art, so one of my pet characters, one of my favorite Kamal characters, dude, from Joel back in the day.
Kamal.
I love any card that features Kamal in the art.
and also the idea that there's a lot of commanders that just sit and are utility. Like, right. I'm never going to swing with Carador. People are never going to swing with Grand Arbiter or Gustin the whatever.
Sure.
Like, it's just like the kind of thing where it's like, well, now I'm swinging with my utility guy that I really don't want to die.
Right.
And you're going to block it with like a freaking Carnage Tyrant.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. Enchantress's Presence is up next. This works great in any Enchantress deck, as it were, which is in the title of the card. 1 green, 2 other for an enchantment. Whenever you play an enchantment, draw a card. I've done a couple of EDH deck techs that are built around Enchantress decks, and normally this effect exists in a lot of different cards across the history of Magic and playable in Commander. And so normally what I will recommend with a deck like this is have one of these effects on the battlefield, keep one back in your hand. You don't have to pump too many onto the battlefield in case of wipes or destruction. Have your creature that you're suiting up very heavily, and then try and get one other creature on the battlefield to get around sacrifice effects, and you're pretty much good to go. This is a staple of that type of deck and offers fantastic redundancy with any of the other multitude of cards that say whenever you play an enchantment or whenever you play an aura, draw a card.
Yeah, man, velocity and win conditions. I don't really know what more you need to do in an enchantment build. It's just like draw through your deck, make sure you find those answers, and secure that victory.
Plus, you have to mention this, Rebecca Guayar on an old frame card.
Yeah, and this is OG frame, and
Right.
I know that this card has had reprints. I believe it's had 1 or 2. So when we're talking about Commander Sleeper Series, we're talking about cheap cards, OG prints. You know, as the game becomes more popular, this is the kind of stuff that we think will be soaked up because it does have good utility, and it is in that old frame. And I do think people are going to start to value that old frame in the long term.
Yeah, I agree. Weird Harvest is up next. Jake, tell us about these
And it is weird, dude.
Tell us about these chicken head things with mushroom cap backs.
God, if we could just like get crazy art like this. Probably in showcase frames. So 2 green and X. Each player may search his or her library for up to X creature cards, reveal those cards, and put them into his or her hand. Then each player who searched his or her library this way shovels it. It's just one of those cards that's like, you know what? It's really hitting the fan right now.
Yeah, let's go
just
crazy.
give everybody a bunch of heat, restabilize this game, and just see what happens.
Yeah, I played a game on stream the other week where one of the opponents was playing a group hug deck. By like turn 5, this player had 2 enchantments on there that was letting everybody draw extra cards, 2 or 3 extra cards at the beginning of every turn. There were 2 or 3 enchantments on the battlefield that every time anybody tapped a land for mana, everybody was adding like 3 and 4 mana for 1 land tap. They were letting people search their library. They played the worm for 2 mana that lets everybody put any number of creatures, enchantments, and artifacts straight onto the battlefield from their hand. That was the point of their deck, was chaos, chaos, chaos. And this card fits into a build like that. Like,
it's a niche
so
effect,
well.
dude.
Yeah.
It's very specific, but for a card that's like $2 or less, or like $1 or less, it does a lot of things that EDH players like. And I know we just talked about it, but those ooh-ah moments, those moments where it's just like,
Yeah.
what can I do that's really going to get a big reaction out of the table? What can I do that's really going to spice this game up? And I think this is a perfect card for that.
I would assume that you, as the builder of the deck, would build in some kind
Plan
of
for it.
creature,
Oh,
right,
yeah.
that when it enters the battlefield, destroys all creatures. Something like that, you know, so that you can go get exactly what you need, and you know that what you're going to get is going to try to downplay the upside that your opponents got
That's a
from
very
that
good
card.
point.
Cryptic
very good
Gateway is up next. It's a 5-cost artifact in that old brown artifact frame, baby. Tap 2 untapped creatures you control. You may put a creature card from your hand into play that shares a creature type with each creature tapped this way. So I showed Jake this card, and I was like, look, Jake, another good tribal card that I hadn't seen before. I made a whole video about good cards that can go into any tribal deck, and I didn't include Cryptic Gateway. But Jake made a great point that this card could get even more crazy.
It's a pretty big deal in anything tribal. I like it if, like Joel said, if you can figure out a way to make everything every creature, you could do some really degenerate stuff with this card. Again, more of a casual EDH card. 5 cost. A lot of CEDH stuff really value stuff that's low to the ground. Very low converted mana cost. So as far as like tribal decks go, I think this is a great inclusion.
Yeah,
It's a
so
great
if
card.
you're able to play a lot of changelings in your deck, or you're able to have some enchantment or artifact that says all creatures are all creature types, like Jake said, that is a way to get that card.
You could essentially just empty every creature out of your hand because it's an effect on the card. So it doesn't matter if the creatures have summoning sickness.
Yeah.
The card specifically says tap an untap creature you control. So you could just be like, let's get them out there.
Right, yeah, exactly. Doom Cannon is up next. It's another tribal. You will see that in this set. Onslaught, then Legions, and Scourge. You will see that there are tribal cards in these sets.
Lots of morph. So Doom Cannon, 6 cost, another more casual EDH card. But as Doom Cannon comes into play, choose a creature type. And for 3, you can tap it. Sacrifice a creature of the chosen type to Lightning Bolt.
Yeah.
Seems good.
Yeah, absolutely. If something's already going to die, dump 3 mana into the Doom Cannon, go ahead and sack that creature. If you have this seems to shine for me in like a plant tokens or a sapperling tokens, something that is making a lot Eldrazi spawn. If you're making a lot of like 0/1s, that would be the deck that I think this kind of card would thrive in, because you're going to have a lot of extra little token creatures running around, and it does say sacrifice a creature of the chosen type, not sacrifice a non-token, which I love pointing out when it comes up, when they don't include that non-token clause on there.
Oh gosh, I wish it was just like a mana sink with a colon and not the tap ability, because you could just really go crazy with this card as far as infinite mana goes. But no, a little dialed back.
Absolutely. We've got a cephalid whose like soul is being pulled out of its mouth or something. Big fan of the art, I have to say. We've got some other cephalids here with Riptide Replicator. We've talked about this card on the channel before. 4 and X for an artifact. It comes into play. Choose a color and a creature type. Riptide Replicator, which is harder to say than you would think, comes into play with X charge counters on it. Pay 4, tap it, create an XX creature token of the chosen color and the chosen type into play, where X is the number of charge counters on Riptide Replicator. That's a lot. We see it making slivers here. Slivers were in the set, and these cephalids are like, okay, we can make, the ultimate killing machine. I always saw slivers as kind of the MTG version of xenomorphs from Alien, because it's like supposed to be the ultimate killing machine in the lore, especially when they combine into a legion of slivers. But another way to keep your tribe on the field when you run out of cards or you're not drawing what you need. This is a way to keep those triggers rolling.
And not sorcery speed, so you can EOT, tap 4, put an XX on the field. Yep. I like it. Yeah. I think it's good. And you have to think, a lot of people are going to be playing like board wipes and removal. What do you have left over that you could spend that mana on when you don't have spells to play? Because sometimes that's how it goes in EDH. So cards like this are really good for creating a threat when you don't have cards in hand.
Yeah. Absolutely. Slate of Ancestry. I found this card. It's a 4-cost artifact. It says pay 4, tap it, discard your hand. Hopefully you've only got 0 or 1 cards in your hand. Draw a card for each creature you control. So it's not necessarily tribal based, but if you have some kind of token generating deck, if you have some kind of, elves that just go wide and they're tapping for a lot of mana, you can pay 4. Hopefully your hand is empty to draw a card for each creature you control. That seems very strong to me.
Yeah, I start thinking about this card in like a blue-green build that runs, everything like Jace and Thassa's Oracle and Laboratory Maniac, and just filling up the board with like green creatures, blue creatures, play Slate of Ancestry, and now you have an interesting little way to win the game in Dig Down Deep. I know a lot of people are always talking about those cards. Those are very popular CEDH cards that a lot of people are playing, like Tainted Pact and a bunch of cards to try to race to the bottom. What can I do to draw my last card? Yeah, exactly. And this is one of those cards, it fulfills a niche, but it fulfills a very, very, very popular niche, which is creatures on the field.
Yeah, the last EDH game I played, somebody slammed Avenger of Zendikar, and that card comes in, dumps you a plant token onto the battlefield for each land you control, pay 4, tap it, discard whatever's left in your hand, draw a card for each land you control. That suddenly becomes very potent when you combine it with something like Avenger of Zendikar.
And artifacts, enchantments, we're about to talk about another enchantment, but these artifacts and these enchantments, they don't just like fold to normal board wipe like creatures do. They require very specific cards, which is why you see so many of them on this series.
Yep, absolutely. Aurification is up next. It's a 2 white, 2 other Wrath of God cost enchantment. Whenever a creature deals damage to you, put a gold counter on it. When each creature with a gold counter on it is a wall. Walls can't attack. When Aurification leaves play, remove all gold counters from all creatures. So it's like a white No Mercy, sort of. It doesn't remove the creature, but it turns it into a wall if you get touched by it.
That's a good way of describing it. Yeah, I definitely could see that.
Kind of like a white...
It's the same mana cost as well. It's cool.
Right. Yeah. And I gotta tell you, I love Gary Ruddle's art on this card of this halfway Orified, I'm gonna say, bear creature, and then the demon in the back that is just like a beautiful gold statue.
It's sick, dude. It's really, it's probably a really fun piece to do. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, absolutely, it was. It's just cool to find playable white cards, especially because white has the known quality of being super low power as a standalone EDH color in and of itself. And so it's nice always to find a card that I think might actually be playable in some kind of mono white EDH deck.
Yeah, and white has life gain, so you can take that hit to get the gold counter on there. It's probably not going to be the hit that kills you, most likely.
Right, yeah, exactly. And all they get is one hit, I'll tell you that. Here's a card that is pretty well known. That's Blatant Thievery, Jake.
Yeah, so this is the OG border. Before you go type it in the comments, we'll save you the time. We know this is a reprint. But it is that OG border. For each opponent, gain control of target permanent that player controls. So 3 blue, 4 other. You're talking 7 mana. You build this into a control shell, whether it's Esper or blue-white, or maybe even, blue-red in certain situations. Anything that runs blue.
This card is in my ramp deck. I run this card in my Uro ramp EDH deck. And I'll tell you, I can get to 7 mana pretty fast with that deck and start taking permanents, 1 from each opponent. That's a way for me to keep the battle in my favor and the board under control.
I'll take your Planeswalker, I want your Soul Ring, and I'm going to take your blue source.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, in a ramp deck, there have been games where I'm playing the Uro ramp EDH deck, and I just go, I'll take your Soul Ring, your Mana Crypt, and your Thran Dynamo. Bring them over here, please, and then tap for another 7 or 8 cost.
Exsanguinate.
Yeah.
No, I know. Yeah, well, I know that's not in the deck, but essentially.
Any card like that, the deck runs Sandworm Convergence because I want to slam that on turn 4 or 5. That is what the deck does, is ramp to high cost spells. And Blatant Thievery is one of my favorite. Yes, it was reprinted in one of the Commander products. It was reprinted in Rivals of Ixalan, I believe. But this is the OG. It's got the OG art. It's got that OG border. We've said it in other Commander Sleeper Series videos. We like that OG card. That's normally the one that we include in the Sleeper Series. That brings us back around to Astral Slide. Let's close the book on Onslaught. We appreciate you watching so much. Let us know down below what cards we missed from Onslaught.
What did we miss?
You think have some Commander playability. The conversation continues down there.
We love doing the Commander Sleeper Series. We're going to bring you Legions next. It's got a lot of creatures, not a lot of enchantments. Actually, 0 enchantments. Is that correct? It's an all-creature set?
It's an all-creature set. It's going to make Jake pick creatures for this series. It's going to be nuts.
I've already been looking, and it's mostly just uncommons that I'm interested in. But anyway, Commander Sleeper Series, we love you here at Jake and Joel. Click like, click subscribe. If you're so compelled, go check us out on Patreon. Any level gets you into the Discord, where we're active daily. We're always talking to people. Until next time, I'm tapped out.
I'm tapped out. We'll catch you on a flippity flip.